Welcome to Things Police See podcast. The podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, old ginger face Stevie Boy, here with you. It's been a challenging last 3 weeks, just very busy. Schedules had not been aligning, so I'm back at you with a throwback episode. It's actually episode number 15, and the guest is really great. I re-listened to it before I'm putting it out now, and it just reminded me why I was so excited to have him on in the first place. He's a police helicopter pilot. I think the only one to ever have come on the show, and it's just fascinating to hear how these guys train, the calls he's went to, shooting from the helicopter, all this stuff. I hadn't then, and I haven't since then ever worked with a police department that had an Airwing. The guest I'm talking about served as the aviation unit supervisor for the Ontario Police Department. And before that, he was a canine handler for the Ontario Police Department. And I'm talking about the great Sgt Weidner. Without further ado, here is that interview.
This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Eric, thank you for coming on the podcast, my man.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So you were introduced to me through the first interview I ever did, Rob McCreary. You grew up with Rob, or you know Rob somehow, correct?
I knew Rob as an acquaintance because you worked for a neighboring agency. And then I was in canines when he got into canines. So got to know him a little bit better that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Canine's usually a pretty tight-knit group of guys.
Yeah, and we were in the same training group. Our cities trained together, so that was we saw each other pretty frequently.
Okay, yeah, I was real excited that you were willing to come on the show because it sounds like you had a long, great career, and also you were a pilot for an Airwing, police Airwing, which I don't have much experience with at all, and I have a lot of questions, and I put some questions out to the listeners. They have questions, so we're just really, really happy to have you here. Let me ask you this. How do you even, besides already being a helicopter pilot before you're a cop, what's the path to becoming a pilot on a police helicopter?
Well, it's a little bit different for everybody. I can tell you what it's like for Ontario, and that is, surprisingly enough, no prior flight experience is necessary. It's preferred, but like I said, we've taken people that have had no flight experience, and typically what happens is they will come in, and the first position that you can really kind of get yourself into is the alternate tactical flight officer. And so the tactical flight officer is what we used to refer to as the observer. Okay. Somebody along the lines felt like tactical flight officer was a better description of the actual position, because observer, that you're really not doing much. You're observing, but you're integral into really everything that you're involved in. So I think they felt like there was a need to kind of address that, like everything else. There's a need to call things change the names. So that's the actual description of the job, or TFO is what they're referred to by the industry people. So you can be selected as an alternate TFO, which means we bring you out for an orientation, and you'll go through an interview and a flight test to make sure that you've got some sort of aptitude for the work, and then you would be working, basically covering days off or vacations or different things like that. And whenever your shift could release you to come out and work in air support, that's what you would do. And what that allows is the people at air support to kind of get a feel of what your skills and talents might be or might not be. And then from there, if it turns out that you do have an aptitude for that area, then the next step would be to bring you on as a full-time TFO. From there, I don't know of an instance where this has ever not happened. We always pick our pilots from the TFO pool. So you would have had to have been a TFO in order to transition over and become a pilot. I would say it's probably 50-50 with regards to the people that are selected as a pilot who have flight experience and who don't have flight experience. So a lot of the guys have like maybe a fixed wing or private pilot's license. So we've had a few people that have actually had a rotorcraft license or a helicopter license. But we've also had people that have had no pilot certifications whatsoever.
That's really awesome that Ontario does that they will bring a guy up from the ground. That's cool.
Well, I think, when you look at it, and because the last 6 years there I was spent as the unit commander. So I took over as a supervisor for the entire air unit. And what you find is that everybody just is not a skill set that everybody possesses. So when you find somebody that has the aptitude, it's not necessarily whether or not they've got, had the extra time to go out and get a pilot's license, because there are people that have done that and they've kind of thought, well, they'll get fast tracked through, and they've, unfortunately it doesn't transpire that way because they're not set up to handle the workload that's required in that position. So it's, and I say that because it can be pretty intensive. I mean, obviously you can understand that if you're trying to pilot, a $5 million aircraft over a populated city at a 400 or 500 feet above the ground at night in Southern California, while you're trying to keep your TFO on the suspect, there's a lot that's required there. A lot of moving parts, literally and figuratively.
Imagine.
And it requires a fair bit of concentration and the ability to multitask, the ability to be really fluid because things can change rapidly. And so when you find those qualifications, it's not always because that person has a pilot's license. And that's why we're looking at these people way before that as alternate TFOs and TFOs, because we're really analyzing, how do they handle the pressure? How do they handle when it gets really busy in the cockpit? Do they fall apart or do they step up? And when the pilot's workload increases, do they take the initiative to start helping out on the pilot side, start changing radio frequencies, things like that? Those are all things we look for. And then those are the kind of the precursors or the indicators that person would be a good fit on the other side of the aircraft. The advantage of that is every one of the pilots knows exactly what the guy on his left side is doing because they've done it.
Right.
So when it comes to rolling into a call, how that guy wants to roll into the call. You kind of, there's a lot of unspoken communication that goes on, because I could literally tell just by looking across the cockpit if I had my TFO situated too far forward or too far back on like a traffic stop, just based on how much he was having to turn or where his head was rested. And so there's a lot of that stuff that just kind of comes from spending so much time on the other side.
That makes sense.
And a lot of times, it goes the other way as well. We don't want the new pilots being a TFO. We want them piloting the aircraft. As you build experience, it becomes easier and easier, when somebody tells the TFO to go to channel 2 or go to a different channel. If he's got his hands full and he needs to stay out the window, the pilot can reach down and switch the police radio over and say, hey, you're on channel 2. And then that's where that bidirectional, not non-spoken communication comes in.
Okay, so there's not. I don't know what I was imagining, but it's not just a pilot up there running the radio by himself, flying around. He's obviously, the pilot is in control of the helicopter. His main thing is flying, and then the TFO is kind of doing a lot of cursory duties like the radio and.
Yeah, I explained it this way one time, and it was probably the best way to kind of explain it to somebody that doesn't actually or hasn't actually done it. It's like playing 2 video games at the same time and then carrying on a conversation with 2 to 3 different people all at the same time. And so I've when I was a TFO and we would show people the helicopter, I used to always direct them to the TFO side of the helicopter. And my standard line was, this is the business side of the helicopter. This is where all the magic happens. And then even as a pilot, I found that to still be true. The toughest, quite honestly, the toughest job in the police department today is that of a tactical flight officer, because the ability to multitask, process huge amounts of information, direct a scene, get people where they need to be, keep people from getting hurt, all while you're traveling at 100 to 130 miles an hour, sometimes in circles above the ground. It doesn't get much more technical and much more from an information processing standpoint than that. And that's not to take away anything from any of the other assignments. But I can tell you, having done everything from detectives to SWAT to canine SWAT to mounted detail to air support, that honestly that TFO position is probably the most technical position in the department.
It sounds like it, man. I don't know. I think I would try it once, or if I got a shot and come down after one shift and be like, "Oh, that was fun. I'm never doing that again."
And what we find is there are people that are really comfortable in the air, and there are people that are not. And you typically kind of fall into one of those groups. So, a kind of a funny story. We had a guy that had been with our department for over 20 years, and his dream was to get to air support. And this guy, you could literally drop him blindfolded anywhere in the city, and he could, within a matter of minutes or seconds, figure out where he was. But we would put him in the helicopter, and he would lose complete situational awareness. Would have zero idea where he was. And he came out every year and would test for, an alternate observer position or TFO position. And it was a little heartbreaking because he was the nicest guy in the world, but you would get him up. And I mean, in Ontario, we have an international airport in the middle of the city.
Right.
There's some big landmarks, and you would be trying to coach the guy through it, saying, is there anything that looks familiar? Either UPS ramp with 35 jumbo jets parked all over it. Is there,
mountain?
Yeah, you have the intersection of the 10, 60, and 15 freeways all in the city. Is there a freeway that looks familiar? Is there anything? And this guy would literally sit there and say, no, nothing.
Oh, man.
And so it was, unfortunately, he never got that break, and he ended up kind of, I think, coming to the realization that it wasn't going to be something that was going to be fulfilled. But I tell that story because it's not uncommon for people to get up in the air and just kind of lose all awareness of north, south, east, west, anything. And then there's some people that get up there and it just is, for me, it always was the same thing just from the air. So I could very quickly look around and instantly tell where I was, what streets that we were over, and that sort of thing.
You just kind of had it.
Some people just have it, and some people don't.
Man, Eric, I see a lot of helicopters in the air around these parts. So, I mean, it must be all different agencies, and I know some agencies pool their funds together to share helicopters. Does it get crazy up there? I mean, it seems like there's helicopters everywhere in Southern California.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would say it's crazy. It's because it's pretty controlled. But if you take into consideration that over the entire continental United States, at any time, 1/3 of all the air traffic that's in the air is over Southern California.
Whoa!
It adds some complexity to what you do. But having had said that, it's like growing up in a big city. If you've grown up in a big city, traffic and the hustle and bustle of things doesn't seem that out of place to you because you're used to it. Whereas if you had grown up out in the country and then you're introduced to it, it seems like just complete chaos. So I think it's kind of the same thing. We, as pilots and as TFOs, we're introduced to that environment from the very beginning. So we don't ever know anything different. Now, having had said that, I can tell you that if you get on the 10 freeway going toward downtown Los Angeles over a pursuit that's going 90 to 110 miles an hour, your workload increases exponentially and incredibly rapidly. I mean, it's just things start happening really, really fast. But you try to always have yourself in a place where you can handle that. And at times, if the pilot needs help, he'll tell the TFO, "Hey man, I need you to grab a channel for me. Switch me over to El Monte. It's 122.8, or whatever it's 122.1." And the TFO will know how to do that. So it can be hectic. And I would say that probably 15 years ago, there was a little bit more friction between law enforcement and the news media as far as them showing up on calls and kind of getting, I don't want to say getting in the way, but there was times where it felt like they were kind of breathing down your neck.
Yeah, I'm sure desperate for a good shot.
Yeah, but what's happened over the last 5 to 10 years is the optics on these camera systems has become so good that now they can stay way up out of the way, where you hardly even know they're there, and then they can still get their shot. And I think we've evolved, at least in the Southern California area, where the news, at least in my experience, respects what law enforcement and first responders are trying to do. So while their sole purpose is to try to get the shot, they try to respect the public safety element as well. And so I've found that over the last 5 to 10 years, the relationship between law enforcement and the media has gotten a lot better.
At least you're getting along in the air,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, I can't speak to any of the other
right.
relationships or things that are publicized, elsewhere. But I think there appears to be at least a common interest to respect each other in the air.
So if you're in a chase and there's news choppers up above you and you're just ripping down the 10, how fast were you comfortable pushing that chopper? How fast would you operate at? Like how fast could it go?
It can go, like the top speed's probably right around 130 something miles an hour, 130 knots, which then translates into about 150 something mile an hour. Having had said that, it was rare that you would have to push that. Once you were over a pursuit, it was rare that you'd ever have to push it that hard, because there's not many places in Southern California where somebody can drive even 100 miles an hour constantly.
Right. And you're going straight, you're going as the crow flies, obviously. So
we're going as the crow flies, and they're coming up on traffic and they're having to weave through people. And so the task wasn't really keeping up with their pursuit once you were over it. A lot of times if we got the call and we were at the hangar, then the challenge was catching it. Because once you give somebody a head start and they're doing 100 miles an hour, even if you're flying 150 miles an hour, it can take you a while to catch them. So that was really the time where it felt like you were, you couldn't get the helicopter to go fast enough. But the rest of the time was manageable. And then it was just a matter of kind of keeping your head on a swivel and making sure that everybody around you was doing the same thing. And what happens when a pursuit goes for an extended period of time now is you'll either get a helicopter from the same agency or from a neighboring agency that will fly what we call high cover. And basically what that means is that helicopter will climb up 500 to 1,000 feet above the helicopter actually overflying the pursuit. And the high cover helicopter will take over all of the radio traffic with the towers and any other aircraft that might be in the area that they need to coordinate with or deconflict with.
Oh, that's cool.
That leaves the flight crew that is right on top of the pursuit. It gives them the ability to just really focus on what they're doing in the ground, and then everything else is taken care of. And that's really beneficial when you get a high workload type environment like that.
Oh, I can imagine. It's just one less thing.
Yeah. And the other thing is you have to be cognizant of where the airspace is. And for those that don't understand, airspace are these circles that exist in the sky, and you can't see them. It's kind of like the delineations of a city. Although typically with a city or a county, you might know that this road is the different point. Once we cross over this street, we're in the next city or we're in the next county, and you don't have that in the air. So you have to have instrumentation and you have to have awareness so that rough landmarks that will tell you when you're crossing into certain airspace. Because like in Southern California around LAX is the most highly restrictive airspace that there is. It's called Class Bravo. And you cannot just fly through it. Even when you're in pursuit, you can't just bust through it and say, sorry, we're chasing somebody, because they may have, a Airbus A380 with 300 passengers coming into land, and they can't have that type of conflict. So you end up having to do some coordination, and it's not uncommon where we've been chasing people and we've been told to climb, 2,000 feet when we're at 400 feet above the ground. Well, the last thing you want to hear when you're following a suspect, that you've got units pursuing, is that you're going to have to climb 1,600 feet. And it's not a matter that you're going to lose them, but just the whole process of climbing is really kind of, it can throw kind of a wrench in the monkey wrench in the works, because it just is something that takes time and takes some effort and might take you actually off your target. So there's that exists too. And there's a lot of airspace. I mean, the majority of the area in Southern California is controlled airspace, meaning that you got to either talk to a control tower or an ATC, an air traffic controller, and get clearance and authorization to transition through it. So that's another consideration. And it's just something that the great thing is we have a great rapport with the air traffic controllers. And so around your local tower, they almost always know, we used to take our controllers pizza, every couple of months we would get pizza and take it down and drop it off. And then we would go up and talk to them. And it really helped, because then when it came time for us to get, a clearance or something, they would do whatever they could to kind of get us through and transition us and make our job easy. And at the same time, we weren't, a student that was putting a heavy workload on them, and they weren't having to repeat things. And so you kind of form a mutual respect for each other. And that goes a long way when things, get busy.
Yeah, definitely putting a voice or a face with a voice is really good.
Yeah, very much so. So then they know, these guys aren't just out there trying to be difficult. They're trying to do a job. And the other thing was we always offered and left the invitation out for fly-alongs with the air traffic controllers, because for them to come see what we were doing would give them a different perspective as well. And they would understand that sometimes some of the things they would ask us to do weren't necessarily necessary or feasible, but that, if they didn't understand the type of job or the type of flying we were doing, it could seem that it would be a requirement. So yeah, it would go a long way toward their understanding of what we were doing, and vice versa. When we went up to the tower, they would kind of show us what they were doing, what their responsibilities were. And so it became a two-way street.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, with all the airspace, like you're saying, it's so restricted, how are drones affecting what you're doing up there? I bought one of those DJI Phantom drones back a couple years ago. I bought it. It was like, I used my tax return. It was like, it was like $1,500, and to this day, it's incredible. It will go about a mile away from you if you have a pretty clear horizon. And it's super maneuverable. It can, on YouTube, I've seen them go above cloud cover before. And when you do this now, it's logging everything and it's telling you the whole time, hey, this is illegal. You shouldn't be doing this. By the way, we have a log of it and we know it's you. So if it gets sucked into a turbine, you're screwed. But that doesn't stop a lot of people. These drones, you see them buzzing around. Would that screw with you guys?
It can. I never personally had an incident where it did, but it was kind of always in the back of your mind, because the difficult thing is you most likely, probably 70% of our flying was at night, just because that was the time where things were busiest. So at night, you're not going to see a drone. It doesn't matter whether it has lights on it or not. There's the chances of you seeing it are pretty slim. So you always just kind of hope that maybe there's not one drifting around up there.
And could a chopper take it? Could you just bash right through it usually, you think?
It all depends on where it hit the chopper. You could actually, if you hit it in the tail rotor is a little more fragile place, and you could actually lose your tail rotor. And then it's not like that. We practice loss of tail rotor control and loss of tail rotor landings. So it can be done, but it's not something you want to do
at nighttime.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you took it in a canopy, I don't know that one of those, if you were going fast enough, wouldn't come right through the canopy and cause. A bird can actually cause significant injuries if it's large enough, because a bird will come right through the canopy, and there's cases every year where flight crew are hit with bird parts or birds that break through the windshield.
Wow.
So it's a growing problem. I think the FAA's got their hands full with trying to figure out how to control it and how to monitor it. I think they're great tools.
Yeah.
I see them as being supplemental to the helicopters and their ability to kind of get underneath, like let's say a patio cover or something like that, or go down and take a look in the open door of a shed in the backyard, or looking in areas, for lost persons where maybe you couldn't get a helicopter into, but you could fly a drone down into a little canyon or something. I think there's a definite application, and I know a lot of agencies are using them to plot like accident reconstruction or crime scene stuff. And so there's a lot of applications where I think they're useful. I think, but those are professional applications. I think the question is going to be, how do we address the consumer applications and how do we control it? And really, I don't always think it's a malicious thing on the part of the consumer. I think it's more just a lack of understanding, a lack of understanding as far as how dangerous it can be. It's one thing to tell somebody something, but if they really don't understand what the cumulative consequences are, then to them it might just be, well, it's just a rule, but it's no big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. When I got mine, I think if you have pretty good common sense, you immediately feel like you're doing something wrong. Because I flew mine way the hell offshore on Cape Cod, and I was like, there's a bunch of little airports there, and it was out in the mix. I was like, this feels wrong. I shouldn't be able to do this. Right. And now I've registered it like they want you to, and frankly, it's not as fun anymore. I get nervous now. It's all registered. Yeah. It's got a serial number. It's up there, and I've actually think I've seen like a kind of like a chart of them going up, getting popular. And then there's kind of less of them around now. I think people are maybe have a healthy fear of them, which is probably good.
Could be, yeah, and like I said, they can be. I don't know why the FAA hasn't just mandated GPS tracking devices in them. Because, I mean, we have GPS devices in everything now. We have them in our phones, we have them in watches, we have them in, I mean, so it's not a matter of size, or it's just, it's more of a cost issue. These companies obviously don't want to spend the money to have a GPS enabled device in these things that can actually track their whereabouts at all times.
See, mine has that. It's
some of them do. A lot of the ones that are coming just straight out of China that are, you know, just kind of the
kamikaze style.
Yeah, they don't have that. So, yeah, it is. It's a concern. It's a growing concern. I know that our counterparts in the fire service or the wildland firefighting encounter them a lot more. And the problem that they're running into is their rules state that once one's in the air, they have to suspend all firefighting aerial activity.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because they simply can't risk running.
Oh, you said aerial. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So the ground crews will still fight the fire, but they will end up losing all the air tankers and the aerial coordination until they can identify the unidentified UAV and get it on the ground. So, but I know there's companies that are working on technology, and I know there's technology available that will down those drones.
Shoot like a net at them or something besides a shotgun.
It's an electric. They can identify the electricity, the signature coming from the UAV, and just scramble it.
That could have been the dumbest thing I've said. They throw a net on it. Obviously, something very high tech. Yeah, what do they call those when like a some kind of pulse goes out and electronic things fail? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, there is that, but it's less. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know all of the details with regards to technology, but I know I've talked to people and they said that there is technology available that will locate a drone and basically just shut down the power to it. So it'll basically just go to the ground.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that I guess it's become a necessity, right? I mean, you have to have something to address these things. You can't have people's lives in danger and then have to call timeout because somebody didn't get the memo about not flying their drone over a wildfire.
Yeah, tell those firefighters down there that are, in 150 degrees.
Yeah, or the people whose house is about to get consumed by flames that the air tanker can't come in and save it because this guy wants to fly his drone and get some cool video.
Right. Oh, man. Terrible. People are the worst. Now, I have a question for you. I've been itching to ask you. I noticed that there's a certain county out here that will shoot people from their helicopters. Now, this is like not allowed, right? Federally not legal, right?
No, it's totally legal.
Oh, it is legal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought they were being like badasses, kind of,
No. I mean, it's we had an airborne use of force program in Ontario.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I started it about 2 years before I retired, and it took us about 2 years to kind of research it and identify how we wanted to do it, and then implement the program. So the flight crews go out and train every 60 days. So every other month they would go shoot an aerial course, and we have
That's so awesome
courses set up where we have targets on a range, and we overfly the range, flying very specific flight profiles. And without getting too specific, our objective was to be exposed for the shortest amount of time, but give our shooter maximum opportunity to address whatever they needed to address. And the other thing that we did differently was we used our own flight crews. A lot of agencies, they deploy SWAT personnel. The problem with that is typically for an event that you would need this type of use of force, you don't have time to wait or try to locate somebody. And then more frequently, like we talked about earlier, the level of expertise required to operate in and around a helicopter is such that you can't just take somebody who knows how to shoot a gun and throw them hanging out the side of a helicopter and say, okay, now go hit this target.
Right.
They can become so overwhelmed by the noise and the wind and all of the other things, the G-forces, that it just is, it's not a practical or a reasonable expectation to expect somebody that can just do that. So that's why we started using, we train all of our flight crews, all of the TFOs, for this role. And Ontario goes in service every day, and one of the things flight crews do is they check out a rifle, and they check the rifle, and then they're all assigned ammunition, and they take that with them when they go fly. And they all have harnesses, and so it's very controlled, and I don't want to Monday morning quarterback anybody, obviously, but there's not everybody is maybe conducting their program in the same way. Everybody kind of has a different style. I'll just say that.
I would say there's like a certain sheriff who seems to shoot people more than other people.
maybe that. Yeah, I don't know. I know that the programs are much more common than you might think, but they're typically as restrictive as we followed the guidelines of our use of force policy, so we would have to meet all of our use of force guidelines before we could engage somebody from the air.
So it's a very specific situation, does not arise.
Absolutely.
In a regular way.
I would refer to it as the broken arrow, scenario, where it's every other attempt to resolve something has been used and failed. And this is the one thing that can stop, a loss of life or something along those lines. And so it's that's the way we've trained for it. It's the way we train for it all the time. And that was kind of the way it was understood. And so we were training for something that we would probably never use, but our philosophy was the first time you do it should not be the first time you do it.
Right.
And so
that's a good rule.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, that came from our chief. He was a younger guy, and when we had a meeting and I was talking about this, I said, where are you on this issue of use of force? And he says, I would like to have it in our toolbox. He says, but I don't want it to be the kind of thing that we pull out and we hope it goes okay. So that was how we kind of kicked off our program and got very serious about identifying every aspect of it and how we wanted it to look and how we wanted it to perform.
Like, would you have to come in and then go broadside so the shooter could line a shot up? Is that kind of expose yourself that way?
Yeah, there was several different profiles that we would fly. And the idea was you were trying to limit the amount of time the helicopter was exposed, because our philosophy was always, if we're shooting at somebody, you can't just expect that the person's going to stand there and be okay with it. You have to assume that they're going to turn around and try to shoot at you. Right. So we tried to use cover, and we would use terrain, so that if there's a maneuver called a pop up, and it's basically you come in slightly above street light level, and if you're in an urban environment, and you obviously have to make sure that there's no wires, or in your path or anything like that. But if you come in low and relatively fast, it can be very difficult for somebody on the ground to figure out where you're even coming from.
Forget shooting me. I'd have a heart attack if that happened.
Right. And then we would do what was called a cyclic climb, which is basically you just come back on the stick, bring the helicopter up, And then as you come up and you're exposing yourself, you would turn it sideways so that the shooter had a clear line of sight and could engage the target. But to give you an idea, the engagement would take probably 1 to 3 seconds. Because as soon as you heard the first shot fired, as a pilot, you were lowering the collective and you were diving away. Because we were trying to give the shooter 2 to 4 seconds on target. And that was part of not sitting up there like a sitting duck and saying, hey, let's start shooting. Let's have a gunfight from the ground to the air. The idea was that we would come in fast and it would be an element of surprise, and that we would project an amount of force that would be overwhelming to anybody on the ground. So you kind of use what you have to your advantage, and you try to limit the things that aren't to your advantage, and then obviously you try to do everything as safely as possible.
Be a lot easier if they just like mounted a 50 cal on that thing.
Yeah.
The citizens would love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So Eric, can you tell us a time when you were piloting the helicopter that you were like freaked out, or a really alarming thing that happened in the air?
Well, I was flying one night, and the winds were probably gusting at, I don't know, 65 miles an hour. So almost approaching, I think, what they consider like a Category 1 hurricane or something like that. And it wasn't uncommon out in the Inland Empire, as anybody who knows who's been out there, for the winds to they have these Santa Ana events. And so we were getting ripped all over the sky. And when you're trying to fly patrol, the circle that you try to fly over a call turns into kind of like an oblong, mutated sort of geographic shape.
Right.
As you are flying upwind, which is like trying to go upriver. And then the second you turn and you get a tailwind, the aircraft wants to drop. And then of course you get pushed like you're on a roller coaster ride going downhill. And we were working a call, and in the middle of all this, somebody with one of these green lasers decides to start lasing us. And this thing came, and this was the first time I had been exposed to a green laser. I'd seen the red ones before, which were just kind of mildly bothersome, because they would point them at you. But the green ones, if you've never been exposed to it, will literally cause flash blindness.
Oh my gosh.
And they're highly, highly intense laser beams. And it's really dangerous because it doesn't even have to hit you directly in the eyes. Just the light refraction coming off of it through the plexiglass and then hitting the canopy, the inside of your cabin. And so in the middle of all this, we get hit with a green laser, and I instantly lost probably 50% of my useful vision. And I immediately lowered my head down to try to limit getting hit with it again. And at the same time was trying to get the helicopter straightened out. And then it's kind of instinctive because you instantly go into the hunter mode, which you would think that maybe you would just want to fly and go the other way. But I think the cop side of us instantly says, oh, this guy's not getting away.
Right.
And so my TFO did the same thing. He got on the infrared camera, and we started looking, and these guys tried to hit us again. So we were able to pick up their location, and it was several miles away, believe it or not. But we ended up flying over there and getting 3 people in custody and recovering the laser. And
wow, that's unbelievable. What kind of device? I mean, this isn't a pen laser for presentations, right?
It's you'd be surprised. It's like the size of a small, like a Streamlight Stinger. It's very, very small. But the wattage of the laser, it's designed to point at stars. They say they're for like astrological use, but the idea is that they can, from the ground, try to point out constellations in the air. So that's how strong of a laser it is.
How does that work? Point out constellations? Like you can see it in the sky?
I'm an astronomer, but all I know is I was working a surveillance one night over Chino, and we were at 6,500 feet above the ground. And this guy was hitting us with his laser. And it blew me away because at that altitude, you almost can't really see the helicopter.
It's like over a mile, right?
Yeah, exactly. This guy could see us and consistently hit us with this laser. Now, he was hitting the bottom of the aircraft more than anything else, and like the blades. So it wasn't like a direct hit, but it was surprising to me how somebody on the ground could have something that precise and kind of stay on you. And we ended up just blacking out and flying away, and then it stopped because at that point he couldn't even see us. So
that's going to be a major federal offense, right? Screwing with a aircraft like that.
Yeah, it is. It's a federal offense, and there's a California penal code that they're charged with, and then a lot of times the federal district attorneys will get involved and pick up the cases as well. And that's something that's for some reason probably about 5 years ago, it got really popular, and it's kind of been on the decline since then, fortunately. I think people have kind of gotten the message because I think it gets publicized enough that, hey, this is not a good idea.
Yeah, they need to be made example of because that can't be happening.
No, I mean, and like I said, until it happens to you, I don't think most people really understand how devastating it can be to your vision. I mean, it's like it's literally like if somebody, like the old flash cameras or something like that, if that went off, right in front of your face and you saw nothing but spots, that's really that's the equivalent. But imagine that happening and you're flying a helicopter and you're in the air and you can't just go, oh, I'm going to take a minute to let my vision come back, because helicopters aren't, everybody used to always ask me what's the difference between an airplane and a helicopter, and I fly both. And the easiest way to explain it was airplanes want to fly. If you airplane and the engine's running, it'll stay in the air. I mean, they're amazingly resilient, and they'll just kind of keep flying. I said but a helicopter, conversely, is the exact opposite. If you take your hands off the flight controls in a helicopter, it's going to start spinning around and end up upside down in the ground really quick.
Yeah, there's no like gliding in a helicopter. There's no break.
No, you can auto rotate, but you have to be on the controls and you have to be in command of the aircraft.
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah, but yeah, you don't want to be passed out or asleep or without all of your senses when you're flying a helicopter, because it won't end well.
Oh, did you see those two? I don't know what agents, was it LAPD? The two helicopters that hit, their rotors hit, and then they just like basically.
Oh no, that was Pasadena. That was about 7 years ago.
I just got shown that video because someone knew you were coming on, and they're like, "Look at this." That is, yeah. I mean, it's two. You can correct me here, but it's two choppers each on its own pad, right, or landing spot for the police. Yeah. And one of them just gets a little too close, and I think, do both choppers get trashed for that?
Yeah.
Oh
they
my
both,
goodness.
There was one had landed, but the engine was still running, and the second one was coming into land, and they got too close and they touched rotors, and from that point on, everything just comes. It's the worst possible scenario. Things are spinning so fast that everything just kind of.
Nobody died, right?
Nobody died, fortunately.
But that's like what, $10 million in aircraft gone?
Yeah, and it was and then you get Caltrans and the FAA involved, and so there's probably a lot of lessons learned from that.
I'll put a link on my Facebook. I have a Facebook group for this podcast. I'll put a link on there so people can check it out. It's
okay.
It's pretty. I just immediately felt bad for everybody involved. I'm like, if you don't lose your job, you're just like going to be like the schlub forever.
Yeah. Well, there's something in aviation. It's called the idea in aviation is it's different than kind of everything else because you have to have complete transparency. So there's this philosophy where if somebody makes a mistake, but it wasn't an intentional mistake, and they're forthcoming, the philosophy is that you don't slam that person, because what you don't want is you don't want that example out there. You don't want, hey, the guy made a mistake. It was an honest mistake. Granted, he wrecked a helicopter, but he said, I totally blew that. In retrospect, I shouldn't have done this. I should have done it maybe a little bit differently. The culture is such that you don't take that person and crucify them. You make sure that they understand what the problem was. If training needs to happen, you train them, and then you move forward. Because it's worse if that person says, based on the fact they know that there's no tolerance, a zero tolerance policy, if you will, people are going to hide stuff.
Yeah, let's put that much more pressure on the pilots, right?
Right. I mean, you have to know that if you're trying to do the right thing, accidents will happen. And it doesn't matter whether it's an accident and you're directing traffic on the ground or whether you're flying a helicopter. Things are going to happen. And so I think the takeaway is, were you doing what you were trained to do? Were you doing it in a responsible manner? And was the intention for what happened to happen? And if those are yes and no, then you say, well, then how do we prevent this from happening again? But you don't necessarily hang it all on that person.
That makes sense.
At some point or another, everybody could end up there.
Absolutely.
So,
Eric, do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Before I let you go here, the last question I'm going to ask you is just, can you tell us about the most intense call that you experienced as a police officer? It doesn't have to be in the air, just through K9 or SWAT or patrol, your most intense call.
Oh, that's a good one. It's when I was a K9 for 7 years and doing that and having over, I think almost 100 apprehensions. There's just a lot. I remember, I can remember being around several shootings. Those were pretty intense. I remember one night, I was working and two of my buddies, I tried to run them both down. And so they ended up in a shooting, and then I ended up driving 25 minutes across town, code 3, to get to where they were at. And when I got there, they were still shooting. And there was...
You show up to that, you're like, is this still happening? It's a long gunfight.
Yeah. And the irony was I had a ride along with me, and I had been telling him how it was usually pretty quiet and not much happens. And we left the station and went to a pursuit. And then from the pursuit, we went to the shooting. And as I parked around the corner, because I didn't want to put them in any danger, and said, I'm sure it's over. Just stay in the car. I'll be back. As soon as I step out of the car, gunshots are going off.
What do you do with so this is like a civilian ride along?
Right.
What do you, I mean, we had those back on the East Coast too, and guys literally pulled over on the highway and had people get out because they didn't want to get in trouble for hurting the person.
Right.
Not that that's the correct protocol, but what do you do in that situation?
Well, I tried to park far enough away to where I felt like they wouldn't be in jeopardy.
And they signed up for this kind of like...
Yeah, but at the same time, it wasn't like in Ontario at that time. It wasn't like I could drop them off somewhere. They would have been worse if I would have dropped them off without a car to be locked in.
Yeah, they get murdered.
Yeah. So, as I'm telling them to stay in the car and taking off, and then you take off running toward the gunfire around the corner.
Wow.
It's a little bit, I guess, surreal when you look back on it, but But it's something I didn't think twice about. And I know any of my friends wouldn't have thought twice about running to help me. So I guess those are the things that you look back on after 30 years, and you feel fortunate that I'm able to be here talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of roles or a lot of hats, did a lot of like intensive positions too, K9, SWAT. So with that shootout, when you had the citizen, everything, you guys got the bad guys and no harm, foul? No
harm. No police were severely injured. There was a guy that was some byproducts of the entire incident, which was a complete kind of well, I don't want to use this term, but there was a lot going on. There was tasers deployed. There was nightsticks. There was canines. There was pit bulls that were trying to attack the police canines, and those were where they were shooting at those dogs. And
sounds like a modern day West Side Story. What was going on? The dogs were fighting?
Oh yeah, it was an experience. So, but yeah, the result was the bad guy went to jail, and everybody else was okay.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Eric, I want to
we can do another one, and I can, because the canine thing is a whole maybe separate episode in and of itself.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to thank you for coming on and say, I got to have you back, because I know there's so much more in there. So you willing to come back for another episode in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.